Hi friends, E.C. Maltbia here, Senior Pastor of the True Holiness Saints Center in the beautiful city of Conway, Arkansas. And you know what time it is. It is Wednesday Word time. So what is our Wednesday Word for tonight? Our Wednesday Word is prayer. More specifically, I want to talk to you about the powerful prayers that believers should be saying every day. Powerful prayers. So what is prayer, Pastor Maltbia? Prayer is simply having a conversation with God. And if you remember on last week, I shared 3 prayers that every believer should be praying daily. The first prayer was this: God, sharpen my ears to hear your voice clearly. We ought to pray every day, God, teach me how to be attentive to your voice above every other voice. Secondly, last week, we talked about, Lord, expose every counterfeit blessing that looks good to me, but not necessarily good for me. And the reality of the matter is this: every day we ought to pray, God, show me what opportunities to take and what opportunities to avoid. Show me what doors to walk through. Show me what doors to stay away from. But then thirdly, we talked about, God, convict me quickly when I start to drift off course. And all of us ought to pray, God, the first step I make in the wrong direction, show me right then so I can correct course. And so tonight what I want to do is continue on this theme, powerful prayers. Powerful prayers that believers should be praying daily. So number 4 is simply this: God, give me the patience to pause before making a decision in my life. Give me the patience to learn how to pause and pray before I make big decisions. Solomon says these words in Proverbs 18 and 13. To answer before listening, that is folly and shame. In other words, what King Solomon is saying to us is this: hasty decisions end up with regret. When you move too quickly, you end up regretting the steps or the actions that you've taken. Always remember, we ought to pray, God, help me to slow down long enough to think through the process. God, help me to be patient and slow down the process long enough to make sure that I hear clearly from you before I respond in any manner. God, give me the patience to pause before I make any decision. Now, what does that look like in real time? What does that look like in our day-to-day life? Well, it could mean, God, help me to quit making impulsive purchases. Yeah, God, show me purchases that I can't afford or purchases that I don't need. But it could mean avoiding impulse spending. But it also means, God, slow me down and help me to calm down before I respond and send an angry email, an angry text, or respond angrily on social media. Yes, give me the patience to pause and pray so I can calm down emotionally, so I can think clearly. It also might mean that I don't get so frustrated that I quit a job or a project that I shouldn't be quitting. It also could mean to us, God, slow me down to hear both sides of the story before I make a judgment on a conflict between two parties. The truth of the matter is this: a lot of us hear one side of the story and we've already made up in our mind about who's right and who's wrong. But when you pray every day for patience, patience to pause and pray before you make a big decision, it helps you to think clearly. It helps you to vet the process. In fact, let me give you this social media quote for today. What is our social media quote, Pastor Maltbia? It's simply a thought or thesis that we encourage you to put out on all of your social media platforms for information and inspiration. Maybe you want to text it to somebody, but here it is. You can't make a good decision with poor information. You cannot make a good decision with poor information. So you ought to pray every day, God, help me to be patient so I can think through the process. God, help me to be patient so I can do my due diligence before I decide on a course of action. God, help me be patient so I can make sure that I hear from you and not from my emotion. Number 4 is simply give me the patience to pause before I make a big decision. But then the 5th one is simply this. Every day you ought to pray, God, reveal the hidden motives of the people around me. God, reveal the hidden motives and intentions of the people who are around me. 1 Samuel chapter 16 and verse 7 says it best. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. In other words, what God is speaking to Samson this day is simply this. As a community, as people, we tend to look at people and we tend to judge them based upon their appearance, based upon their charisma, based upon their bank account, based upon their popularity. But you ought to pray every day, God, let me see beyond the surface. Expose to me the hidden motives and agendas in a person's heart. God, I want to see beyond. Give me the discernment to see beyond the smiles and the flattery. And let me know their agenda that nobody else can see. And when you begin to pray that type of prayer, it will prevent you from getting into wrong romantic relationships. Yeah. When you pray, God, help me to see beyond their appearance and their charisma and the things that they have and see their hidden motives, it will help me to see whether their words and their actions equate. In other words, it'll help me to see, God, do they really love me for me? Or are they simply flattering me because they're trying to get something from me? But when you pray to God to expose hidden motives, it will start with romantic relationships. Not only romantic relationships, but you ought to pray that God exposes the hidden motives with people who want to be your friends. One of the worst things you can do as a believer is get connected to the wrong group of friends. I'm talking about the people who use you. They use you for your time. They use you for your talents. They use you for your finances. They use you for your influence. But they don't necessarily care anything about you as an individual. You ought to pray, God, show me who loves me for me and who loves me for what I can do for them. I'm talking about those friends in your life, those so-called friends, those fair weather friends that are always there in the good times, but you never see them when you're going through a storm. I'm talking about those people that get close enough, smiling in your face, waiting on an opportunity to stab you in your back. In fact, I'm even talking about those co-workers who are in your back pocket asking you how you do this and how you accomplish that. And it's simply because they're waiting on an opportunity to sabotage what you're doing or to take your very position. We need to pray daily, God, reveal to me the hidden motives of the people who are around me, so I can see them for more than how they look or their charisma or what they have in their bank account. Yes, we need to pray, God, give me the patience to pause before making a critical decision so I don't regret the decisions I make. And here's the last one, and I'm going to get out of here. God, help me to align my ambitions with your will for my life. Yeah, we ought to pray every day, God, help me to align my hopes, my dreams, my ambitions, my goals to line up with your will for my life. In fact, Jesus himself says it best in Luke 22:42. As he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he says, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. Here's what I know for sure, and don't you ever forget this next statement. Just because something is hard doesn't mean that it's not God. Here's what I've learned over the years. Walking with God is a faith walk, which means in real time, when you're walking with God, sometimes he stretches us. When you're walking with God, not only does he stretch us at times, but at other times he challenges us. Walking by faith and not by sight will stretch you, it will challenge you, and sometimes, whether we like it or not, it will delay us. Just because it's hard doesn't mean that it's not God. So you ought to pray every day, God, align my ambitions with your will for my life. So what does that mean? That means, God, help me to trust you, even when my hopes, dreams, and goals seem to be delayed. That means, God, help me to trust you. Help me to be able to praise you, even when the answer is no to something that I really want. That means, God, help me to accept the unexpected, painful life changes as part of a greater plan for my life. Help me, God, even when you're pushing me out of my comfort zone, to say yes to your will and yes to your way. God, help me daily to align my hopes, my dreams, and my ambitions to line up with your will for my life. That might mean while my life is in a holding pattern and everything is not working exactly like I want it to work, that might mean that in those critical seasons, I'm able to celebrate the blessings of others while still waiting on my own. Ma'ams and sirs, our Wednesday word is powerful prayers. Prayers that successful Christians ought to be praying daily. When you lay down to sleep tonight and when you get up in the morning, you ought to be praying for patience, the ability to pause before you react, the ability to pause before you make a decision. But secondly, you've got to pray, God, help me to see people beyond on the surface, reveal their hidden motives, and finally, align my ambitions with your will for my life. Until we speak again, my friends, be blessed.